In this video, I'm going to demonstrate the assignment red sculpture. The first thing that we're going to need to do is go to File, Open, and this is how we are always going to open up all of our images that we're going to work with in Photoshop. You should have your Google Drive over here on the left-hand side. If not, you'll need to log into your Google Drive account so that it will show up over here as we start all of our projects and save. And then everybody's Google Drive is probably going to be a little bit different, but I did ask you to create a design, print, and publish, or a DP&P folder to save all of our files in. So I'm going to go into my folder. I created a subfolder called Photoshop, so I know all of my Photoshop assignments, notes go in here. And then I have a subfolder for the assignment red sculpture. Again, you organize yourself so it makes sense to you. But I saved my red sculpture image found on the monthly preview, and I'm going to go ahead and open that up. All right, again, your tab is going to have the file name on it. Photoshop is always going to open up your images in tabs. I don't like tabs, so I like to pull mine out into an image window. You can do whatever you are comfortable with. It makes no difference to me. You're going to notice that our layout might have changed if you didn't set a new workspace. We should have done this in class. If we didn't, what you can do is if you go to Window, Workspace, you can create a new workspace and you can save your workspace as a specific name. So I will come in. I know we use the color palette. I know we use the layers palette. We don't use really any of these. So I'm going to close that group tab. We're not really going to use channels or paths, so I'm going to get rid of that just to save some clutter space here. I'm going to come to Window, and I know we need the History palette, so I'm going to pull that up. And again, you can organize yourself however you need to. And then the Navigator palette, they're all in alphabetical, is going to be super helpful for us today. It's attached to the histogram, which we don't really need, so I'm just going to kind of collapse that. All right. So by bringing all these palettes in, it kind of clutters the space, right? It gets a little overwhelming. I'm going to kind of stack these up, but you can kind of adjust and condense as needed. These right here will expand into like a little sidebar. So if you don't use a lot of icons, you can kind of collapse them and then they'll become these like little symbols. I just close out of them because I don't like clutter. Again, you do you. Whatever makes sense. But if you double click on a tab name, so like the character palette, I can double click on it and it'll condense it, but it's still there. That way, if you're not actively using it, you can just keep it there, but you can condense it so it's not taking up as much space if you're working with a lot of different palettes. Okay, so first things first, the goal of the lesson is to take this colored image and we're going to turn it black and white by using a new adjustment layer, and we're going to manipulate the hue and saturation. So we're going to take all the color out of this, as not really though. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it so it makes sense to y'all. All right, so we're going to take the color out, quote unquote, but we're actually going to create a mask, all right, a color overlay that looks like the image is grayscale, but it's really not. And here's how we do that. So we should have already done step number 1, open the red sculpture image from the monthly preview. We need to also save this to your Google Drive. So if you haven't done that yet, file save as. And you always want to save to your computer. So I'm going to press this don't show again button, otherwise it's going to keep popping up every time. And again, we just want to save that to your Google Drive. And I have my sub Photoshop folder and then sub red sculpture folder. The instructions ask us to just save it. So I'm just going to save it as red sculpture. The file type right now is a JPEG. We can just keep that as that, and then we'll save. It's asking me to replace because I already have it saved in my Google Drive. So I'll just press yes for now. And then you may get these little windows that pop up for setting changes. Just press OK. If we need to change any of those settings, I will specifically note that in your instructions. So the next thing that we need to do is come up to our menu bar, and we're going to select Layer, and we're going to come down to New Adjustment Layer, and we're going to come over and down to Hue and Saturation. All right. Now, this is the window where I would like you to press OK for default settings. Just press OK. You don't have to change anything. And then you're going to come to the Properties palette. The Properties palette in step number 4, so in the dialog box of the Properties palette, you're going to take down the saturation level all the way down to -100. So the saturation is in the middle of the Properties palette. I'm going to take that down all the way to -100. So you can drag the slider, or you can just highlight the number and type that in, and it'll remove, or what it appears to be, removing all of the color or the hue or the saturation from that image. But if we take a look at the layers palette over here, you can see that we have a hue and saturation layer, and it's a big white mask. And that mask is kind of that color grayscale effect that is covering up your background. So if I hide your hue and saturation layer, all the color is still there. You can see the color in my background image. But if I turn that back on, it's that grayscale mask that we're looking for. All right. So the next thing that we need to do is just close out of that Properties palette. We are done with that. And then what we want to do is save our work. Get in the habit of saving often. I've seen Photoshop quit on students so many times, and then what happens is you have to start all over. Okay, save often. I would say every couple of steps. Save as the first time, but then you can just do Control S for your shortcut. You may want to write that down. Control S is your shortcut. So every couple of steps or every couple of adjustments that you're happy with, you just do a quick Control S to save. You know you're going to be in good shape. All right, so this time, step number 6 asks us to save it as red sculpture plus your initials. So my initials are MB, and this time we would like to save it as a Photoshop document. So you can see that Photoshop provides the file extensions or the file formats for us, which is really nice. So if you click on this, you have a bunch of different options of file types that we'll eventually explore some of them. But for now, we need to save it as a Photoshop document because we want to make sure that we're saving all of our layers. Remember, our layers are super important. All right, so now that that's saved, you can see my file name updated here. All right, so now I have my initials, and now it's a PSD, a Photoshop document, instead of a JPEG. Removing the red structure. So at this point, we need to take this mask of the grayscale that we created on our hue and saturation layer, and we need to remove the part of the gray mask that's covering our red sculpture. So in the end, if I hide this, I just want the red part of our sculpture exposed. That's the only color that's going to be in our image, and everything else around it, the sky, the trees, the grass, it's all going to stay gray. Right? So our goal is to only expose the red sculpture. So I should only see red. Okay. No other portion of our image should be in color, and everything should look very natural and smooth as far as the red sculpture shape. Okay. So step number 6. So this is step number 6 under removing red sculpture. Apparently my numbers didn't update. I apologize. Oh, I got a couple on the back too. I'll have to make some changes to that. Step number 6 is use the brush tool, the lasso tool, magnetic lasso tool, or polygonal lasso tool as needed to remove the structure. Okay, and then we'll talk about a soft edge brush to help with transition the edges, and then the size of the brush we'll go over again. I gave you a tip that you can select the red sculpture all at once, which some of you will really like, or you can do it in sections using multiple tools. It is completely up to you how you go ahead and execute that. It does not matter to me as long as it's done correctly. So we need to make sure, first and foremost, that we're on the hue and saturation layer. That's going to be really important for us. The second thing is I want to zoom in, and I'm just going to show you a little section of this. So I'm going to zoom in here. Oops. There we go. And I'm going to come in. I have a lot of like straight lines going on all the way up here. So I'm going to come in with my polygonal lasso tool because that's a straight edge selection tool. And again, the navigator palette and the zoom are going to be your best friend, because then you can come in and you can really get in here with like all of your edges. All right. So like I can just do itty bitty little sections like this. Again, we got to come back to our starting point, see that little closed circle, and then our marching ants will come in. All right. Step number 7 says using the brush tool, use a black foreground color to remove the mask. Remember, we're working on the mask right now. We want to remove it to let that color through. So my foreground color, I'm going to switch to black. And then what you can do, one option, there are a couple different ways, I'll show you how to do this, is to find the brush tool. My brush tool size right now is 3 pixels wide. So we want to increase that a little bit. And you can kind of see how my brush feathers out right here. That's the hardness, if you will. If you want it to be kind of more of a hard round edge, you can click the little brush types here. So I'm going to increase my size. I'm going to give myself a little bit more hardness. It's a little bit feathered, but again, not quite what it was. And then we need to be, it's not letting me do anything because I don't have my hue and saturation layer selected. So if it's giving you error messages, take a look at your layer palette. So now my brush is nice and big. And then what I can do is just click and drag and color in that marching ant section. Okay, so that's what I was talking about in our instructions about doing the selections in different sections. Now, since I'm done with this selection, I'm going to do the shortcut of Control D, or if you don't like shortcuts, remember that select, deselect. You may want to write that down in your notes too, just so you remember. All right, select, deselect. So all my marching ants go away, and then I can continue on with a new selection. So I can come in here, and again, we want to keep our marching ant selection nice and tight around the perimeter of the edge so that we keep that true natural shape of our red sculpture. Now this curves a little bit, so I'm going to get maybe a little bit more close to the edge here. And again, I'm jumping around a whole heck of a lot. You can go all the way around by using your navigator palette, but you're going to notice, oh shoot, I just made a big boo-boo. I'm going to do Control 0, which isn't working. Wonderful. But now I got a whole lot of lines going all over the place. And this is probably going to happen to you. I did it on purpose so that I could show you. If you zoom in too far and you try to do too much with the zoom and you start clicking in random spots and trying to move all around, your marching ants are going to follow because your tool is active. All right, so get your navigator palette or whatever you're working on in frame, if you will, and then you can come in and just work with the area that you have in your window. All right, and this is curved, so I'm going to do small little clicks for my selection. And again, you do not need to use the polygonal lasso tool here. You can use any one of our selection tools that we went over. Any one of them will work. I'll show you a few. But I am a fan of the polygonal lasso tool for this specific assignment. So that's the one I like to use. Again, I'm trying to make sure that I keep the true natural shape of the red sculpture and staying nice and tight and close to those edges because I don't want any green or blue to come through from the trees, the sky, or the grass. All right, and you are probably going to do a better job than I am because I'm trying to keep the video relatively short. Remember, we got to come back to our starting point. The second way to fill in your marching ants is we can come to edit, down to fill, and then remember we need a black foreground color to remove that grayscale mask, and I'm going to press OK, and it's going to go ahead and fill in with red for us. Now notice over in the layers palette, I have the black cutout where my color is bleeding through. So as you make kind of your adjustments, it will go through and show where you're removing that mask. All right. What we also could do is come in with the Lasso tool, and you can, do more of a big kind of freehand selection if you want to. And you can come in with the brush or edit fill, and you could do more of that. And then you could go around the edges by zooming in and doing more kind of detail work, if you will. There are many different ways to kind of make sure that you get all of those details around your red sculpture. And again, my hue and saturation layer is going to update where I removed that mask. All right. So your overall goal is to make sure that you come in and select the entire red sculpture. Now, I didn't show you the magic wand tool in our notes. I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm going to show you how it works. So if you need to go back to, I believe, page 3 of your Intro to Photoshop notes and fill in this, you can. But the magnetic lasso tool, basically the way it works is it selects pixels based on the outline of your image that you're trying to. Okay, so it snaps, in other words, kind of snaps to the edges of your image. So it selects pixels based on snapping to the edge of your image. So you got to click once, and then it's going to drop an anchor. And then as you follow along the structure, it's going to drop anchors, but sometimes it has a mind of its own. So if you get too far, like here, I'm at a hard corner, it hasn't really dropped an anchor yet. So I'm going to click, and it'll drop an anchor when I click. All right, but you can kind of see it's kind of gravitating or being a magnet towards the edge of my object. And it's dropping anchors. You can see it's not hugging tight in a couple of spots. This is why I don't like it. So again, I get a little clicker happy if I try to use the magnetic lasso tool. Sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes, again, it just has a mind of its own. So I don't use this one a whole heck of a lot because you typically, I'm going to have to go back and fix, all of these mistakes now. So I try to click more than not. Got to get around the base of these feet. This is where zoom kind of comes into play. All right, I'm gonna end this journey with the magnetic lasso tool. Got to come back to that start point for those marching ants to pop in. Fill it with black, and then select deselect. So you can see I have green in here. All right, that's a big no-no. I'm actually going to move forward so that I think you got the idea of what you need to do. So on step number 8, it says select areas by the lasso tools that will need to be filled in with black or white. And again, you can do edit fill. So the areas of color that are outside of the red object, like I have a little bit of sky here, I have some grass here, I got some sections here and here. All right, all of those are big no-nos. You're going to lose points for those. We don't want them. So what I would want to do is come in, zoom in, and then I'm going to come in with my lasso tool, and I'm just going to select those areas of color. And this time I want to put the mask back on. All right. So in step number 7, it says that if you want to remove the mask, we're going to use black, which we've been doing, while a white foreground color allows you to replace the mask. So if you made some mistakes like I did, not a huge deal. You don't have to start over. You just need to put white in your foreground color, and then I can come in with my brush tool and I can put white inside my marching ant selection, and then that grayscale mask goes back on. All right, so again, I'm going to do Control D to deselect that selection. I'm going to come in here as close to my red sculpture as possible. I'm going to come back to my brush, still using a white foreground color. That's not my brush. Let's try that again. My brush, my white foreground color, and then you can see as I paint over that or brush over that, it's selecting color. Now, right here, I have a little bit of gray in my red sculpture. Yes, that's stuff that I look for, so you would want to come back in. Again, attention to detail here. Come back in, make that selection, grab my brush. I want to color that red, so my foreground color needs to be black, right? But these are the types of details that you're going to want to zoom in on when you're done, or when you think you're done with your project, and go around the perimeter so that you can do what I like to call cleanup. All right. So that is how you put those masks back on, is by using that white foreground color. All right. If you need more help with that, please ask. I'm going to move forward. So again, we keep the video hopefully relatively short. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add text. We're going to use the type tool. So it's the T symbol. It's actually called the horizontal type tool. And we're going to enter the following text. So I'm just going to click once. You're going to notice in your layers palette that creates a new layer, and there's a T symbol to represent that it's a text layer. And my text is going to read sculpture. Make sure you spell it correctly since it's on your notes. All right, if you don't spell it correctly or anything correctly, you will lose points. Megan is my first name. I should probably put Miss. All right, you'll put your first and last name. And then if we highlight our text, our instructions say that it needs to be 18 point. Optima, these should all be in alphabetical order. You should have Optima on your computers. If you don't, let me know. We can definitely change the typeface that you use. There we go. There's the O's. And I don't have Optima. So we're going to change our typeface. I want a big, bold, thick typeface. Let's go back up. Oh, Jack's candlestick is not on y'all's computer. Let's do impact. Impact. I-M-P-A-C-T. Impact. So I'll change that on your instructions. We're going to do impact. All right. Nice big bold typeface. The color of our text needs to be black. Mine is white right now, so I'm going to come back with my type tool because it deselected. I'm just going to double click on my text. It'll highlight it again. And then my color changer for my text is up here in our tool options bar. If I just click on the color picker window and drag my little circle to the bottom left-hand corner, it'll change that color to black. I just need to press OK. All right, so now we are in good shape. I'm going to try to center that right underneath my red sculpture. Beautiful. So the next thing that we need to go ahead and do is select layer, layer style. Where are you? Right here. Layer style. And then we're going to come over and down to outer glow, outer glow. And we have a dialog window that's going to pop up. And you can see outer glow is highlighted and checked on the left-hand side. Make sure that you check for this first. Otherwise, the settings in the middle section are not going to match the screenshot on your document, and it absolutely has to. So now we're going to run through the outer glow structure, elements, and quality sections and match what it says on your screenshot. So we need to change the blend mode to normal. The opacity is going to be 100, and you can see as I'm making changes, the updates of those changes are showing directly on my document. The noise is going to stay 0. This right here, this color should be white. I would write that down, make yourself note. White is the color here. Technique is going to be softer. The spread is going to be 0. The size is going to be 10 pixels. PX stands for pixels. And then the range is going to be 50. The jitter is going to be 0. And we're going to press OK. All right. The next thing that we need to go ahead and do is make sure, step number 9 under adding text, make sure all the text is on one line and is positioned centered from side to side. So this is where your rulers come into handy. All right, so view rulers or Control R. So if you don't have rulers on your image document, please go ahead and grab those now because we're going to need them. And what we need to do is we need to put some sort of guide, or what we call a guideline in Photoshop, down the middle of our document so that we can perfectly center our text. And we pull guidelines from the inside of your rulers. So once you see your rulers, what we can do is first we got to figure out how wide this image is. So it's 5. So we're going to click inside the ruler. I'm still holding down my left mouse key, and I'm going to drag over. I'm going to read my ruler, and I'm going to drop this line called a guideline at 2.5 inches because that's half of my document. You're going to notice the guideline shows up. Mine is blue. Yours will probably be blue too. You can change this color when we did the edit preferences and then went over to general. There is a guides and grid section where you can change your colors. If you would like to, go for it. I am going to keep mine blue. So now what we can do is we can use our move tool and be on our text layer, and we can kind of snap your text so that it grabs the middle. And when it's perfectly centered and grabs the middle, your arrow key is going to turn white, and then you can let go. All right. The guidelines, they may bother you. You can get rid of them. Control semicolon is the shortcut for those. Control semicolon. If you don't like shortcuts, you can go to View and down to Clear Guides. And clearing your guides will get rid of them completely. All right, so you can keep them. They don't print out or anything. You can hide them by doing Control semicolon. You can turn them on and off that way, Control semicolon. Or if you want to get rid of them completely, that's totally fine too. It's View Clear Guides. And you may want to write that down in your notes or somewhere. All right. It also says, step number 9, top to bottom, the text should be centered in the space below the structure footing, so the red sculpture footing, the bottom of it, and above the bottom of the document. So you want it centered basically from the bottom of the red sculpture to the bottom of your document. So I pretty much have already done that. I'm going to zoom out so you can kind of see. You can eyeball that one. Again, if you want to drop a guideline kind of between that, do some measurement, that's fine. It'll kind of snap at about 3.5 inches. You can do that as well, but you do not have to. All right, step number 10, select the magic wand tool. And the magic wand tool is right here. All right, the next thing that we need to do in the tool options palette, we need to make sure that the tolerance is 0. So my tolerance right now is 100. Just highlight it, press 0, press enter. And that contiguous right here is deselected. We do not want contiguous to be selected. Otherwise, this next step will not work. Use the magic wand tool to select the black part of the text layer. So the first thing that we need to remember is we need to be on the text layer if we want it to select the black part of the text layer. So I'm going to zoom in here so you can see this a little bit better. And I'm just going to hover over my magic wand tool, and I'm going to click one part of the black text. And since we deselected that contiguous box, it's going to select all the black on my text layer, which is what we want. Next, step number 11, in the layers palette, you're going to select the background or the bottom layer. So see how it says background? We're going to select that, and then we're going to go to select, edit up in our menu bar, and then down to copy or Control C. Number 12, in the layers palette, reselect the text layer. So basically what we did here by selecting the background layer, remember our background layer is all colored. So it's selecting where the black text is. It's going to select the grass and the color of the grass from my background layer. So now what I need to do is I need to come back to my layers palette and reselect that text layer. Now in our menu bar, we're going to select edit, paste special, paste in place. And it's going to paste that grass that we copied from our background layer, and it's going to paste that colored grass into our text since we made a copy of it. Okay, you're going to notice that layer 1 shows up. If you want to call this one colored grass, you can double click on it and then rename it. It's probably a good idea to get in the habit of naming your layers because it's something that I will be eventually grading you on. All right, Command 0 will fit your image back into the image window at full scale. All right, so when you're done, yours is going to be all colored red. There should be no green grass or blue sky or walking path shown around. And then your sculpture by your first and last name is going to have that white outer glow with the layer style settings updated. And you're going to have the green grass pasted into the black part of your text. So the first thing that we want to go ahead and do is go to File, Save As, and we want to make sure that we save it as a Photoshop document. Again, we made lots of changes. We have lots of updates to our layers. So we're going to press Save, and we want to replace our original image. If you don't replace your original image, you're going to have to start over because it's not going to save any of the changes that we've made. So always press yes. Yes, you want to replace it. Then we're going to go back to File, Save As, and our instructions also ask us to save this as a TIFF file. So save as file type, not a Photoshop, but we're going to come all the way down, they're all in alphabetical order, to TIFF, tagged image file format. All right, so now that we have it saved as TIFF, you're going to notice that the file extension doesn't show up in the file name. That's normal. It's okay as long as it's saved as that specific file type. The computer will automatically put that file extension in the file name or attach it to the file name for us. Do not type it in. Whatever you do, you will corrupt your file, meaning you won't be able to open it and you will have to start all over again. So we'll save it as a TIFF image. Again, you're going to get options. I will specifically say if you need to change anything. So if I don't mention it, just press OK. Yes, it's going to increase the file size because remember the TIFF file saves all of that information about our layers. It saves all of that data because we use these really large file types like TIFF and Photoshop documents and EPS files for print. So yes, it's okay that it increases that file size. You don't want to see it again, just press that little box. It's totally fine and press OK. All right. Step number 14, review the rubric and self-grade your assignment first. Okay, if you need to make any corrections, that's why we're doing this, running through the rubric. You can put how many points that you think that you deserve out of each category section and then total it at the bottom. The reason I like you all to self-grade your assignments is because you catch little mistakes or errors by reading the rubric, and it allows you to go back and make any changes. All right, so You should get 100% in your student grade column because you have the opportunity to review your rubric and make any corrections before I even take a look at it. And a lot of students really like that. Once you give your self-assessment and make any corrections that you need, then you're going to call me over and I am going to grade your assignment. Now, since you've already self-graded and I've given you the opportunity to look at the rubric and make corrections, I grade these pretty hard. So make sure that you're paying attention to detail going through your assignments. All right. So you'll fill out the student grade column, I'll fill out the teacher grade column, and I'll grade these right in class. All right. We only have a black and white printer in class, so printing it out in color really isn't an option for us, unfortunately, which is why I'm grading them on your computers. If you have any questions, please reach out and let me know. Otherwise, good luck, have fun, and I hope you learned something.